So, as anticipated, Princeton Municipality did pass the restriction on short-term rentals. So they opted for an option that states if you operated an Airbnb historically, you're grandfathered in. They're going to allow you to continue to operate that for 3 years with some caveats, and I'm going to explain those in a second. If you want to start operating an Airbnb, it has to be a primary residence. So here are the steps that took effect January 5th. Step 1, regardless of which one of those categories you fall into, you have to log on to the municipal website and apply. If you're a new Airbnb operator, they're going to request that you prove that that is your primary residence, and there's a whole bunch of documents you can use in order to prove that. If you are one of those landlords who is grandfathered into that 3-year period, meaning it is not your primary residence and you are utilizing it strictly as an investment property, you have to prove that you've been doing that for 180 days. So if you think or thought you were just going to be able to start doing an Airbnb tomorrow and you're grandfathered into that 3-year period, you are not. You have to prove that you were doing it for 180 days in order to have the benefit of that 3-year grandfathered in period. Step 2 in that process, in that application process, is you have to pay the fees. And step 3 is you have to conduct the inspection. They're going to conduct that inspection. Once those steps are done, you have to then comply with their short-term rental regulations. The reason I say it like that is there's best practices. Every website, so VRBO, Airbnb, hotels.com, booking.com, they all have best practices and maybe some site restrictions that you have to comply with if you're going to operate on their site. Princeton has now added a layer that regardless of what site, even if you're doing direct bookings, you have to abide by. Step 1 of those new regulations is you must include the permit number on all of your advertisements. So if you have Guesty or any of these booking systems, or if you have a property manager who's managing it for you, they need to now go in and add all of your permit numbers on every single one of your ads, showing that you are licensed to operate as a short-term rental. Step 2, you have to have a 24/7 service available. If it's not a service, it has to be you. Someone must be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, including holidays, and must have a response time in under 2 hours. So if a client or a guest calls and has a complaint, your clock starts, you have 2 hours to respond, and it must be 7 days a week, and it must be 24 hours a day, including holidays. You have to have that service now added. It's mandatory. Step 3 is you're going to get an 8.5 by 11 placard that's going to go on the front door of your Airbnb that, again, demonstrates and displays that you are licensed to operate as an Airbnb. And then step 4 is you're required to have a 2-year ledger showing your short-term rental history that can be audited. So those are the new regulations that are being added once you are licensed and approved to operate as an Airbnb. Now, you have 2 weeks left to complete this, regardless of which one of those two camps you fall in. The grace period expires January 30th. So there's a little bit of urgency here. If you were historically managing Airbnbs and you want to continue to manage them in that 3-year grace period, you have to take action before January 30th. You can call us, we can help you through it, but you have to take action before the 30th. If moving forward, you're going to begin operating Airbnbs and it's your primary residence, you still have to apply and prove all those items. Now, again, even if you do all of these things right, if you are an investor and this is not your primary residence, you have 3 years to kind of get your ducks in a row and do an analysis of what is your best option moving forward. Maybe the best option is selling the property. Maybe the best option is positioning it for a long-term rental. But you're going to have to entertain one of those two options because, again, that timeline in 3 years is going to come quickly. So it's important to start understanding and evaluating those investments because that time's going to come faster than you think. A few other things I wanted to point out. So one is the question of occupancy tax, or known as the lodging tax. Any sort of transient, short-term rental has a hotel tax, call it that. It's applied in New Jersey. That's not a Princeton thing, but just keep in mind there is a 3% tax that applies to short-term rentals that qualify as transient properties. When I use the expression throughout this whole time, short-term rental, it's under 30 days is what they consider a short-term rental. But I wanted to read this directly from the site. What happens if I violate the ordinance? So violations may result in permit revocation, fines up to $1,250 per day, and possible imprisonment or community service. Each day a violation continues will constitute a separate violation. And then a little bit further down, it says the municipality of Princeton uses software that aids in tracking, monitoring, and identifying permitted and unpermitted operations of short-term rental properties, which if you or a property manager or whoever is doing even a remotely good job of marketing your short-term rental property, it's going to be very easy to detect if you're not in compliance. Again, two of those ordinances. One, you have to have a placard affixed to the front of the property, and in the other one, you have to include the permit number in all of your marketing collateral. So it's going to be very easily detected if you're not complying with this. So make sure you're in compliance. Reach out to us. We can help ensure you remain in compliance, but it's important that, again, your date is 30 days after the implementation of this ordinance, which was January 5th. So take action quickly. The consequences are extreme.